my apologies to our listeners for having this episode of You Killed It a day late, but I have to go. I am in California for my cousin's wedding, and yesterday was my big travel day, and I didn't realize quite how early my flights out of Toronto were, so we couldn't record because I was airborne. I was experiencing the miracle of flight. But thank you, everyone, for your patience. My name is John Chidley Hill.
And I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge, talking about War of the Worlds. And once again, we're really enjoying the fact that they are doing just that standard format. This week's episode picked up within, a bus ride of the last elimination competition where Wes eliminated Zach, and everyone's back at the house, sort of debriefing on what happened. And everyone, at least on the American side, because the house is split up now, officially, along the UK-American lines, that the first four people to be eliminated from the season are all former champions, right? It was Ashley, then Johnny, then CT, and now Zach. And Wes, he's not, I don't want to say he's worried, but he's certainly aware that following that pattern, he's going to be next on everybody's list.
Well, this is why Wes is Wes, right? Because he is aware of his surroundings. He's paying attention to what's going on. He sees the game within the game. Meaning, if you look up and you see, okay, well, here's Ashley, Banana, CT, Zach, and then you look around and you notice that nowhere within that have you seen any of these new people even in danger, while they're just picking off the vets, or I guess the vets kind of go at each other. Wes finally is at a point where he's looking around saying, wait a second, we got to do something, and we got to do something now. And it was a smart play by Wes, but do we expect anything different at this point? Or are we just used to the mastermind that is Mr. Wes Bergman?
Well, and we're certainly going to be talking about Wes a lot today, so I'm going to circle back to this later. But I do want to address some of the comments we got from last week's episode of You Killed It. We got a little bit of heat. We got a little bit of heat from our listeners who were saying, no, Cara made the right decision by putting up Zach because Zach was so disloyal. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think, just broadly speaking, our point was that, a couple of nights of shit talk should not be the end of a friendship, nor should it be the end of a partnership in terms of, if you're being smart about it in the challenge house, you see this as what it is. It's a business, right? And I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think our point was both that Cara should have been still able to do business with Zach, right?
Yeah, and do you know what? It's a throwback, John, to a bunch of classic challenge seasons where the vets would all know, hey, we get rid of everyone else first, and then we sort out what we need to sort out. But in the beginning, we can't be taking each other out because we need those numbers. They skipped that part this season.
Yes. At the same time, back in the house, I guess they're all celebrating. It looks like our best friend Bear he'd been into the cups a little bit. He'd been celebrating. And he and Nani are having a little one-on-one time out on, it looks like a patio, hacking a dart. At least he was. And he's laying it on pretty thick with Nani about how attractive he finds her. And meanwhile, she's like, you're with Georgia all the time. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, it's not. We're just friends. And she's like, I have seen you kiss. Like, I don't have my friends sit on my lap. Like, come on, buddy.
He's a very interesting character, right? And a very overbearing personality. And it's a fun personality. So you can see why people would be engaged by Bear, because he's super, like, he's kind of the life of the party. And in that situation where You have these people, you're stuck in the house, you're looking for things to do all the time. You can see why, you'd want to hang out with Bear in that setting, right? Like, I get it. I understand it on some level. Now, I mean, for him to just blatantly sit there and say, hey, I want to be with Nani. I think she's way more attractive. And to say that to her, I mean, hey, it's reality TV. That's why he's here. He's here to have a good time. He's focused on being being a star of the show. He's firmly taken his place as being a villain. No, I feel like, and he doesn't care about how he's perceived. And there's something, I'll be honest, that's endearing about that.
Yeah. And I was making jokes last week about how he and Georgia were dressed up as Joker and Harley Quinn, just as Polly and Cara Maria were at the same time. And I still stand by my statement that if someone is dressing up as a couple's costume as Joker and Harley Quinn, it's bad news. It's you do not want anything to do with that couple. But I will say, I guess I like Bear slightly more because he has a Joker tattoo, which I only noticed this week. So at least he's about that life. He's about that Joker life. So I was like, oh, okay. If he's into it that much that he permanently altered his skin, I've got a little more patience for it.
Did he just pry into your comic book nerd core?
Yeah.
Is that what just happened?
Yeah, just a little bit. I still think that liking Joker is a basic bitch move for comic book nerds, but that's fine.
I have no idea. I'm so out of the loop on that, but okay, cool. If you say so, I'll take your word for it.
But significantly, in confessional, Nani says she's uninterested in him romantically. I kind of think she's being honest in confessional. Normally I think that people in confessional are no, and deny. I really think that conversation that we saw had the low-key feeling of a sober person humoring a drunk person. Also, those conversations?
Totally. No. I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's funny because as you're giving Nani credit for being honest in her confessional, I'm giving Bear a little bit of credit for being honest in his confessional, where he's saying, hey, why can't I have both? Why can't I have two girlfriends? And hey, I'm not condoning that type of behavior. What I'm saying is he's being honest in the confessional to us, the viewer. And then we can make the decision after that. Do you know what I'm saying? Now, Hey, we're from Toronto. If people remember, go back a couple Drake albums. There was a song called Six Man, like Lou Will. Well, it was called Six Man, but it was about Lou Williams. The chorus is two girls and they get along like a Lou. If anyone remembers that song. Anyways, the two girlfriends. Now, the premise of that would be that they know about each other, which is where Bear is kind of curtailing this whole thing and being kind of scummy. Because the thing is, while you bring that up to Nani, Georgia actually likes him. And that's kind of the sad part here, right? Because we can tell that Georgia actually likes him, but he's just kind of here for the good time.
And, I mean, let Lou Williams, all-time NBA sixth man,
yes,
has the most points as coming off the bench in NBA history now.
Correct.
His two girlfriends know about each other and hang out with each other. So, Bear's not quite at that Lou Williams level where everybody's cool with what's going on. What's significant here, though, is it's not just the cameras that see what's going on. Our man Wes is listening in and sees what's going on. And he sees an opportunity to split up the Brits by their Achilles heel, which is essentially Bear just running his mouth. And if you think about it, I think some people were upset from what I saw online about how Wes went about this. But Wes is smart because the other Brits, like Ashley, like Gorilla Ashley, and Theo, they're playing a pretty airtight social game.
Yes.
Yeah. So Bear, in his loudmouth ways and being so aggressive and also not really backing it up in competition, he's definitely the weak link. Like, he's got to be the target, and he just, with this conversation with Nani, handed Wes an opportunity. And Wes, our man Wes, will make the most of that opportunity.
No, you're right. Because the one thing I was going to say, though, is about this UK alliance, and in any alliance, in any reality show, right? You have your squad, but every alliance will always have that person who is kind of, I don't want to say the fall guy, but essentially the bigger target. You always have one person around that's always going to be the bigger target. And so you're right about Ashley, like Gorilla Ashley, and Theo. I mean, Theo kind of had a coming out party in his own right, kind of in this episode. But at the same time, Bear definitely is like the loud face of the UK alliance, and he will go down before any of those other people go down, right?
Absolutely. The next morning, and I want to emphasize that's the next morning, Cam is stretched out with Theo on a couch.
Yep.
Making Leroy uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And in confessional, Cam says that she wanted to be with Leroy, but he made it clear to her multiple times that he was not interested in her romantically.
In a relationship.
Yeah. And so she and Theo are enjoying each other's company, and to this point, they're just like in a super intense flirtation, but nothing's happened. But I have to say, and this is going to be some old man advice.
Oh, wow.
For our young listeners. No, I think you're going to agree with this. I think you're going to like this.
I'm nervous.
The morning flirtations are twice as valuable as nighttime flirtations.
Ah, yes.
Like, if we compare, like, Bear's attempted flirting with Nani versus what's going on with Cam and Theo, big difference. Although the Cam and Theo flirtation was perhaps less direct than Bear was being, it's got more power because they're sober. She's not wearing makeup, like she's a little more vulnerable. It's way more intimate in the morning, even though they're like in a living room or whatever.
No, so, I will actually agree with you here, John. And I will say that the daytime work, kids, the daytime work is way more important. And it's funny because I remember having this conversation about vacations. Vacations at the resort. The daytime work, kids, is very, very important. And John is correct. It sets up the nighttime work. It makes the nighttime work a lot easier. Let's just put it that way. Daytime work, very key. I'll co-sign that.
Thank you. So Leroy on Twitter, as this episode was airing, went in on the producers of the challenge and said that they have been giving him shitty edits for this whole scene with Cam. All episode.
You know what's funny about that? I was watching this being like, man, this isn't the Leroy that I know. I need Roy Lee back. I don't like this Leroy.
Well, maybe he was there. Maybe he hasn't changed that much. But this all sets up the stage for the drama of the competition.
Yes. This competition was super interesting to me, no? I thought this was a crazy competition.
I loved it. What was it called?
Doom Buggy.
Doom Buggy. I loved it. For those of our listeners who did not see it, they have a monster truck. I can only assume that Wes lent his monster truck to the producers of the challenge for this season because this is the second competition that features a monster truck.
It's part of the deal.
And they have two sort of, I guess they're cables that have your standard issue tires dragging behind it. And between each tire, there is a release. So a competitor will start at the furthest tire back, and it's 10 tires long. And there'll be two competitors on two separate chains of tires. The monster truck starts to drag them through the desert, and they have to climb from tire to tire that's being dragged through the sand and release each tire behind them. And if they get to basically the back bumper of the monster truck and release the tires, their opponent also falls back. And each partnership, their total number of tires is counted up. And if they are somehow in a tie, then whoever had the fastest cumulative time wins. I loved this challenge. I thought this competition was fantastic. What did you think?
I thought it was a lot of fun as well, and I just thought this was super, super hard. And I thought Kyle made the point in terms of, like, how do you train for this? Like, how are you good at this? Like, it was such a crazy thing because not only is this, like, super hard, but then you have to deal with the element of being dragged in the sand, and so you have all this dirt flying in your face as you're, like, laying on your stomach, bumping over the, like, what a crazy, crazy challenge. And the upper body strength was such a huge portion of this. And the way that they just cut it together, and sorry for getting into my TV bag here, but
no, I love it. I love it.
The way that they cut this challenge together in terms of showing us so many of the people that did successful first, and then kind of did like this quick montage of people just falling right at the beginning. Mm-hmm. That to me, it was so interesting because at first I'm watching, I'm like, oh, these guys are doing really well. Like maybe it's not as hard as it looks. But then when they showed all those other people, I was like, oh, no. It is hard as shit. Like you got to give Kyle, you got to give like whoever got all the way to the end, you got to give them a lot of credit. I mean, even if you got halfway through, I think that deserves a lot of credit because that is hard. Like you can't see, you're being dragged, so you have to hold on. So that's like your actual like hand and grip strength. But then the upper body strength to be able to pull your body weight from tire to tire, incredible. And
also, I mean, we're just talking about the physicality of it. All that sand coming up in your face, and the heat because they're all wrapped up. And, like, if any of your body parts drag behind, like, it looked like they were properly covered, but it wouldn't be a pleasant sensation, even with, like, all the gear they had on. Like, at one point, Amanda's leg got stuck underneath one of the tires, and that was all she wrote. Like, frankly, she was lucky that she didn't get dragged behind.
Yeah, that would have been really crazy. And, I mean, your arm could get like tangled up. Like I guess that's the part. They said the truck would be going about 30 miles an hour. And you can't really go much faster than that because at the end of the day, you don't want someone's arm or whatever to get tangled in. You don't want them to start like bumping into the other person. Like this is like that. I always wonder what the insurance and the waivers are that they have to sign for these challenges.
Yeah.
But this one was really dangerous. Like, what a difficult challenge. And that's why I always find it funny when I'm trying to talk to people about this show and explain to them the nature of some of the challenges and how difficult they are. This one was right up there. And I applaud, I bow down to, you know, the people that made it all the way towards the end, or at least got like a good chunk, like people that were getting halfway through, like even Gorilla Ashley getting that far. And he said that, because it was him against Theo, right? And I think it was Kara that made the comment about strength versus length or something like that. I think that was the rhyme that she made. But the point was, it was just interesting to see how different people would do with different body types. And that to me was super interesting. And at the end of the day, who got all the way to the end? Wes got all the way to the end.
Hunter got all the way to the end. And I think Kyle made it all the way to the end.
Kyle definitely made it all the way to the end. And so did Paulie. Paulie made it all to the end.
Paulie did as well.
But again, too, what makes this show and this competition so difficult, cool, it's great that you made it all the way to the end, but if your partner struggles, then you're not going to win either, which is kind of what happened in the end when you add up the two teams and find out like what happened, right? In terms of the rankings at the end, like the fact that Paulie got all the way to the end, but his partner fell off at the beginning, well, cool, doesn't matter. Has nothing, like you don't win. And that's the part that, again, the teamwork element of this competition is what makes it so much fun.
Yeah, and it was funny when Amanda was one of the first people to go, and like I said, she didn't make it past, I think, the first tire. Josh was super upset. Like, he didn't yell at her, but you could see in his face he was disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did it, and he had an even shorter go.
Oh yeah, it was terrible. He fell off like right at the very beginning. Like I think he acknowledged that he didn't even make it as far as she did, right?
Yeah. And it's just hard. And also, I think it's worth noting that those people that did succeed, very different body types, right? Like, Hunter and Kyle are essentially opposites in body types. Like,
Yep.
Kyle is tall and thin, Hunter is shorter and broader. Like, it's I think that maybe this is too subtle, but that there is different strategies given your body type.
Totally.
And also, I think that's what's notable is a lot of the times competitors will watch how the other competitors do it, right? And like learn from each other. I think because of the nature of this, because they're driving further and further away from the group, and there was just like a dust cloud being kicked up, I don't think anyone could learn from each other's mistakes.
Yeah,
like I think you could ask questions, but like you were basically on your own out there. The one guy who I have to point out was Gus when he took off his helmet and his face was just nasty, covered with sand.
Yeah, it was funny. He did look kind of crazy after he was done his turn. And you mentioned how difficult it was to do it, but I wonder too how much it mattered who you were going against individually, because are you being distracted by that person doing really well? Are you distracted by, you're trying to keep up? Or if you went against someone that isn't good and they just fell off right away, well, then it becomes easier because you're just going at your own pace and setting your own tempo. Right? Like, there's so many little things that I feel like go into it, because I feel if you're beside someone else and they're going really fast, that now almost makes you want to go even faster as well, right? So
yeah,
a lot of different little elements to this whole thing. But at the end of the day, who were the top three? The top three were Hunter and Georgia, Wes and D, and then it was a tie, but the other team won by 19 seconds, and that was Kyle and Maddie. Those are three teams that end up coming in first, or being the Tribunal. Is that the crew?
Yep, you got it right. You nailed it. And this is the perfect situation for Wes to make some moves, because his strongest alliance in the house is with Hunter.
Correct.
So suddenly he's got 2 votes that are for sure going to go his way, and Wes and D are very much on the same page. So just off the hop, they've got 3 voices that are united in that tribunal, and that makes such a difference, because that's all you need. You just need 3.
Yeah, and you have Kyle. I thought it was funny. As soon as they sat down, Kyle's like, all right, I vote for Pauly. And it just shows again how much these guys aren't paying attention to the game. And someone brought this up last week, because they kept saying, well, going for Kyle, isn't Kyle part of the UK alliance? And it's like,
no, he's not.
He's just UK, right? But that doesn't, like, he's not necessarily a part of their alliance, because he has relationships already with the other side of the house. So it's one of those things where, yeah, maybe he could tiptoe over, maybe he could, make a little move here and there, but Kyle doesn't seem to be crew with, Bear. Well, kind of, sort of, but not really. But he's definitely not in with like Theo. He's not really in with Ashley. Maybe his partner might be more of an ally in Maddie to those people, but the Kyle and Pauly thing, I don't know. That's a tough spot. But him right away still saying, hey, we're going to go at Pauly. Wes and Hunter, as you mentioned, they want Bear out. And Wes dropped the bombshell on Georgia in that moment, where he decides to tell her, well, this is what Bear said about Nani. He's really more interested in Nani than he is to you. What did you think of Wes's strategy in terms of telling her then in front of everyone, as opposed to maybe telling her, at another time, or maybe one-on-one? What did you think of Wes's strategy here?
I think for strategic purposes, he had to tell her in the group setting.
Okay.
Because he knows, and like this is how it plays out, but he knows that, of course, if he tells Georgia, the first person that she's really going to talk to about it is Bear.
Yes.
And he can't have Bear leaning on her to not vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
So he does the smart thing, and like the smart thing in terms of gameplay, not in terms of being a like kind or considerate person. And he ambushes her and embarrasses her a little in front of the group. But I'm sure also that when they're filming those scenes, they're not allowed to leave that room, right? Like it's
also true.
Not unlike the confessional scenes, right, where they are supposed to get this task done, and there's obviously a producer in the room, and there's obviously one or two cameras in the room, and so Wes knows that she's not all the way trapped, but that it's like sort of it'd be like storming out of a meeting. Like you can do it, but you can't really do it. Like there's social structures in place. And so I think that the timing was everything. And like I saw people online being like, "Oh, you didn't have to tell Georgia like that." I think he did. I think he had to get the proper leverage, the leverage that he was looking for to get the job done. What did you think?
I thought it made sense because really all he's trying to do is just cause some drama. I don't know if he actually thought that she wouldn't vote for him or not, but you needed the optics of at least some dissension within that alliance. And the other thing I probably think he was hoping for, as you mentioned, she was going to tell Bear, but I think he, and also I, anticipated a little bit more of a freak out from Bear, which we didn't really get. And I got to give him credit for not freaking out. Not like you would expect like some crazy antics for him to go over the top, right? And getting mad at Wes or whatever. And instead, he kind of just focused in on Georgia. And I mean, he blatantly lied to her. But at the end of the day, he remained calm, let's say. Whereas I think what Wes was hoping for was more of like him to like blow a gasket and just like kind of go crazy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, loose is cool.
Yes, and that did not happen. But in terms of the risk reward, I think it was a good move for Wes.
Yeah, I think it was the correct move. So at the other vote, so let's break down the votes. You already said obviously Kyle and Maddie voting for Polly and Ninja. Wes and Dee voting for Bear and Davon, and then Hunter and Georgia voting for Josh and Amanda. Hunter uses the tried and true plan of, we've already pissed off Josh and Amanda, let's not piss off anyone else.
Makes sense.
But also, his target is also Bear. I know you said that, but it's just like Josh and Amanda are just going up because they have to vote for someone, and he doesn't want to piss off anyone else. They're not really in danger.
True. And the one thing, though, is Amanda and Josh, I keep wondering, and I brought this up at the start of the season, just the fact of Josh's victory on the challenge that season. Not the challenge, on Big Brother. Yeah, Josh's victory on Big Brother. He kind of just skated through the whole time because no one was really worried about him. No one really thought he was a threat. He was annoying enough that he had a massive target on his back. So everyone kind of felt like, okay, well, we can just hide behind Josh. He can be out in front making a whole lot of noise, but no one's really threatened by him thinking he's going to win. And it almost seems that as of now, that's a game plan Amanda and Josh are running right now. Will it work? I don't think so, because I feel like you actually have to win challenges on this show. But it's fascinating to me that they've been able to skate by this long after being on the radar for that long as well.
Well, I will say Amanda is capable in solo competitions of winning.
True.
Like, she's a pretty good competitor and also pretty good at eliminations. Like, I would rate her out of 10. She's like a 7.5, maybe an 8. It depends on what the competition is. Because at the end of the day, she is a small human being. Like, she's very athletic.
Yeah.
She's fast. she's got good stamina. I'm not knocking her athleticism, but if it's like a straightforward like headbanger, she's going to have a harder time against someone like a Maddie.
No, that's
just
true.
Because she's probably giving up 40 pounds to Maddie, and that's not shaming either one of them. It's just those are their body types. But to me, and like I don't watch Big Brother like you do, Josh is an unknown quantity in terms of how he does in competitions. Like
and it's not well.
Yeah, he strikes me as a physically large guy, but not like a very fit or athletic guy.
Yeah, that's fairly accurate, I would say.
So, and I don't know how he does at puzzles. Unlike Amanda, who's very smart and typically does well at puzzles. So,
yeah, that'll be an interesting trend going forward to see what goes down. Something that for the start of this season, anyways, I've become excited to see how it goes down. Was our what I keep calling the Judge Judy set.
I like it. We can call it that, the Judge Judy set.
But this time around, not much fireworks.
No.
Which is understandable because the Paulie and Kyle just kind of like laugh at each other because it's the same story and they've now seen this. It's just the roles are kind of reversed and they have a chuckle about it.
I need to talk about this for a second. This is the third time that Paulie and Kyle have been in the Judge Judy set together. Always on opposite ends, right?
Correct.
Twice, it's been very chill, right? Like, twice it's been Kyle being like, hey, man. Like, the first time you remember he said, I can't unfuck Kara.
Yeah.
But it was pretty much like him. He was trying to say, like, listen, I'm not going for Kara. Let's just put the past in the past. And Polly was like, okay, this is just from a competitive standpoint. And then this time, they were laughing about it. Like, it was pretty collegial. And they were just like, yeah, we're just going after each other. Yeah. And then they sort of had a very nice conversation. I think Maddie asked Ninja, like, how do you feel about all this? Or, sorry, no, they asked Polly, who do you think you would call out? Like, it was a very
it was civil.
But that middle time, that second time, when shit blew up, it's because Kara was in the room. Like, I really, and I'm not saying that Kara stirred things up. I think that part of the Polly-Kara dynamic is that they show out for each other. And, like, he, like, shows to her how worthy he is of her affection by lashing out at Kyle. Like, I think it's
that makes sense.
Weird dynamic.
That makes sense. Like, he's putting on the show.
Yeah, he's putting on the show. If you remove Kara from the equation and it's just Kyle and Polly, they'll be like, yeah, we don't like each other, but, like, we don't have to deal with each other. Like, life goes on. Essentially,
yeah. And I mean,
yeah.
Other than that, Josh and Amanda, they were pretty calm. Bear just comes in and calls Wes a dirty, stinking rat and says that he's the main target. And it's funny because Bear's antics would probably work on 70 to 80% of challenge competitors, but Wes just calm and cool and then just kind of laughs it off, right? Like, that's not going to... Like, Wes has been through challenge battles against way better villains, for lack of a better term, than Bear. So it's just funny to hear him, like, go through... Like, he thinks he's being all hard, like, you dirty, stinking rat, and talking all tough or whatever. And it's like, And I don't mean talking tough as in, like, I'm going to fight you or whatever, but just, like, you've made an enemy of the wrong person in this game. And Wes is kind of like, nah, this is what I live for, right?
Yeah. And also... Like, Bear hasn't shown us anything in competition.
No, not at all. So having to go in an elimination against him, nobody, I don't think, is worried about it too much, right? Like, down the stretch. I mean, I'm kind of teeing up what ends up happening here. But, I mean, before we get to that, though, do we mention...
We have a club scene.
Which, I'll say this, I was super excited, and normal listeners to this You Killed It podcast know I'm here for a club scene. And this was the first one of the season, and I was super excited when I saw it come up, and I was left a little disappointed, I can't lie.
I am so sad to hear that, because I was excited for you.
Yeah.
Like, as I was watching, as soon as the club scene came on, I was like, "Oh shit, this is Sheldon's jam. This
But
is what we go for."
the thing was, there was just like, maybe it was because everyone's so divided, and so it's kind of like standoffish in terms of like the grade 8 dance, where like everyone's kind of off in their own corner of the gym, and the guys and girls are on opposite sides. Except in this instance, it was like the UK people and the North American people on the one side. Shouts to Shailene representing Canada. Hey, hey, hey. But do you know what I'm saying though? Like maybe that was it. So it was just an awkward vibe, but it just didn't seem like I need the montage of people dancing, right? Just a little quick little something something. And that didn't come. But
well, I don't want to run down the African nation of Namibia, but I'm not sure how great the club scene is there. Like,
fair.
I don't know. Sometimes the venue makes a party, sometimes a venue can kill a party. We don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I do think, though, that you're right, that the fact that the club, and like it was even, I can't remember who said in confessional, but it was as soon as they got into, it's Jenna. As soon as they got into the club, it's divided. One side is all the UK people. The other side is all the Americans plus terrifying human being Turbo and Shailene. So and if you look at the compositions of those groups too, there's not a lot that like is gonna get stirred up. Like Wes is there, but he's married.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna is obviously with Zach, and although he's not there, she's probably feeling like a little bummed out that Zach's not there. Kara and Polly are obviously coupled up. On the British side, in theory, Bear and Georgia are coupled up. Like, there's not a lot of combustible elements to make a great club scene, right?
No,
like,
that's
all
true.
those people I listed off, they're going to be having drinks and they're going to be talking, but like, and maybe they're dancing, but like, it's not really there's not much gunpowder to light off.
No, that's
except, however, that our man Leroy, seemingly, according to the edits, chooses this moment to confess his feelings for Cam.
Yeah, and I really wondered here because there's an interesting edit. And here's a thing for reality TV watchers. And, you know, it's so funny. I get asked a lot by people I work with, like, how do I not watch The Bachelor? Like, they know that I like the challenge. They know that I watch a lot of, like, you know, random, even scripted, just like dramas that you might be kind of surprised that I watch. You know what I mean? But I get a lot of people that ask me all the time, how come I don't watch The Bachelor? And the main reason for it is because The Bachelor does too much of this, what I'm about to describe, that I might have think happened a bit here. What that is you never trust on a reality show when someone is saying something and you don't see their mouth when they're saying it. Right? So you never trust that. And I feel like on The Bachelor all the time, they overuse the cutaways in terms of you're seeing someone else's listening to someone talking. So you're hearing them say it, but you're not seeing their face on the screen. And to me, and this is bad, and this is like, again, I'm in my TV producer bag here, but to me, like the conversations just come off too fake. And it's just like, okay, well, did you guys redub this over? Like, did the guy voice it over after? Like, did you just edit this sentence together to make it seem a lot worse than it is? And now, what I'm saying is, I see this on The Bachelor all the time, and that's why I really can't watch that show. But here, when Leroy, like, the way that Leroy was saying it, it kind of came off to me as if he was saying, I got a lot of love for Cam.
Yes.
Not as much as like, oh, I love you, Cam, and I can't live without you, and I want to be with you, and I want you to be my girlfriend. Like, that wasn't really how it was coming off to me, but the words, I love you, Cam, came out, but I wasn't getting the vibe that that's really his intention. So I find it interesting that that's what you're saying. Yeah.
So he said, I think he said it 2 weeks ago. Yeah, he said it 2 weeks ago when they showed the next episode on teaser.
Okay.
He was already starting to complain about the edit, saying that they were cutting his sentences in half.
Ah.
And there's that scene of him and Nani sort of. It's structured. It's set up to make it look like that they are glaring at Theo and Cam.
Mm-hmm.
He said on Twitter, Leroy said on Twitter, that they were looking at something else, and that cameras took that shot and then edited it in so that it looks like they are mean mugging at Theo and Cam.
Hey,
and
if that's the case, I gotta actually give credit to the producers and the editors here for making that work, because it did look like he was there. Like, that's the part I will say. And again, as a producer, I'm not knocking them for doing this. I think it's great TV making. In terms of storyline, though, right? Like, I think we know enough of Leroy to kind of be like, wait a second, what's going on here? But the example that you just used, that's a hat tip right there to the producers and editors for making it look as if him and Nani were staring at them making out.
That said, I have to talk about how Leroy is conducting himself here, because I do think that he got an unfavorable edit. Like, I believe him, and even I watched this before I saw his tweet, and watching it, I was like, this is some fishy editing.
Okay.
Just like the moment he was talking about, and there are moments where Nani's like, they're making out, and she points directly at.
Correct.
And Turbo is reacting too, which we're going to touch on in a second. But as I said, the morning flirtations have more weight than the nighttime flirtations for a bunch of reasons. And Leroy, we don't know if this is the first time that Leroy has chosen to confess his feelings for Cam, but he did at the club.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the wrong play.
Very true.
Right? This is, at this point, and I know that, you and I, we are old men. We're both 35. And if you look, if our listeners, who I think most of our listeners are in their 20s, I hope they take my advice on this, because this is some old man advice. I've been in some situations not unlike this, where I've been on both sides. I've been both the Cam and the Leroy here. Leroy had 3 options, and he chose the worst option. Option number 1 is you nip this in the bud as soon as you're in this situation. As soon as you are at the challenge house and see that sparks are starting to fly with Theo and Cam, you gotta immediately go to Cam, go to Cam so early that she says, I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing between me and Theo. If you get in that early, then at least that seed of doubt is planted in her head, and you gotta play that long game, right? Option number 2 is you just say man, this is gonna be a shitty, hard 3 or 4 weeks, and you just buck up and keep your mouth shut, quietly fume, maybe say in confessionals, man, this sucks and I'm hurt, but at the end of the day, she's single, I'm single, and it is what it is. I don't like it, it hurts, but she at the end of the day is entitled to do what she's doing. And then with still as part of that plan, you circle back because you have the advantage of living in the United States and Theo does not. And you wait till after the season
wow.
to take things apart. This is the worst play, though. The third option of trying to actively get involved and confessing your love for someone at a club never ever works. It does not work.
The funny part, though, I don't even think it's that complicated. I think all that happened is when the Remy's in the system, right? And what I mean by that is you can tell the conversation that they have when they get back to the house, they're both kind of drunk. And so they're both kind of in the mood to kind of mess with each other. Because we know there's an element to this where Cam's kind of flirting with Leroy at the same time because she likes the fact, as everyone's been in that position where, hey, you might want more from someone, but they weren't giving you the attention. So how do you get that attention? We'll show that you're getting attention from someone else. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously what's going on here. And I think they're all aware of that situation. But when you add the alcohol in, that's kind of what led to that conversation to begin with. And that's why it kind of looked awkward. And that's why it looked kind of weird. And overall, I was kind of like, where's the Roy Lee that I know? But end of the day, hey, Killer Cam, do your thing. Nani made the point, is Killer Cam doing some politicking here? Because Theo is doing really well. Theo is also another part of the UK alliance. And Leroy, let's be honest, hasn't been doing really well in challenges. And Nani says she thinks Cam's doing a bit of politicking here. Do you think that's the case?
I think there might be an element of that.
Interesting.
Which, again, is why I think that, Leroy's move is to just be like, you know what? I'm going to take the hit for the next 3 weeks or however long we're here. And I'm going to sort of back out in the United States.
I also just don't think that Leroy is that interested, right? Because if Cam says that on multiple occasions she's made her feelings known to him, and he just doesn't want to be in a relationship, I mean, you're not going to realize that now you want to be in a relationship. It's just the fact that you're seeing her with someone else. So that's not even genuine, right? So when they get back to their normal lives, I mean, it's not like he's going to be like, oh, I want to marry you now. That's not what's happening here.
Yeah. We also have to talk about, there's one other little romantic thing happening, also involving a member of the Real World Las Vegas cast. That is Hunter and Nani vibing. I didn't see this coming at all. Did you?
No, I didn't see it coming, but I also just find it funny because those are two people who always seem to find themselves in some relationship one way or another, right? So
yeah.
To see those two in that situation, it's not surprising. To see those two in a situation together, it's like, okay, cool. We'll see what happens next.
It makes some sense to me. As just now, as you and I are talking it over. Because Nani was involved with Kohada for a while, right?
Yep.
And, Hunter has some Kohada vibes. He's very polite. He's very respectful. He's got that southern drawl happening. There's some elements where I can see where Nani wants a respectful, nice guy. And I know I criticize Hunter fairly often on this show. I don't have a ton of time for Team Young Buck, as longtime listeners know. But I do believe Hunter's a good guy. You and I always take that
No, I know what you're saying.
You and I always talk about how would we have a beer with this person? I can't imagine really being friends with Hunter, but could I have a beer with him? Yes. I don't think it would be a bad time. I don't think he'd be rude. I just don't think he and I have a lot in common. And my biggest complaint about Hunter is always gameplay related because he's so emotional. But I don't think he's a bad person. And I could see that in the house where everyone's so messy and in each other's grills, Hunter's almost rigid southern politeness would be welcome. Where you'd be like, well, the bathroom smells like shit and the kitchen's a mess, but at least every morning Hunter says, good morning, how are you today? You know what I mean? It would be a welcome to relief to have someone as polite and considerate as I am sure Hunter is, because he's got the southern manners happening.
No, that's fair. That makes sense. I'm interested to see where that goes over the coming weeks. As obviously the longer you stay in the house, the more lonely you might get. So people start to couple up. Yeah, looks like something that will be a storyline going forward for sure. But we get to the actual voting portion of this episode, and I mean, we all knew where this was going. We knew that it was going to be Bear and Davon. They were the ones that got voted in. But who did you think they should have picked to go
Oh, that's a
against?
good question. I think I would have gone, well, it's hard. I mean, in terms of who can they beat, I would have called out Josh and Amanda.
It's interesting. Yeah.
However,
Although I wonder if in this challenge, and I don't know if they had all the bags out there so that they knew what was going to happen, but I feel like someone said it looks like an endurance challenge, right? When they were having their little discussion. I wonder how Josh would have done in this challenge, because Josh is a big dude, but I don't think he has endurance at all. So
no, he doesn't. And Amanda, again, who's athletic, but she's small.
Yeah.
Apparently the bags, just for perspective, weighed 30 pounds each.
No, that was a hard elimination.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, that was tough. So
I do have to note, I loved how Davon sang to Bear. Like, he started to go off on this rant, and she was like, I'd like it if my partner came and spoke to me. And, like, everyone laughed. Like, she's definitely, like, having to ride herd on a really emotional, outspoken dude. And, like, she's clearly, like, figuring out what it takes to, like, rein him in. Because he calmed down immediately when she did that. Like, I think Bear and Davon actually get along pretty well.
Yeah, she's done a good job in managing their partnership, but I think the funny part from that is he was legitimately just about to pick the team on his own.
Yeah.
Which, like, dude, chill out. But anyways, so they end up picking Leroy and Shailene, which, I mean, is a pretty solid decision because they don't think Shailene is a very strong competitor. And so, like, it really came down to, yeah, they thought Davon could probably beat Shailene and Bear could at least keep it close with Leroy. And so this final elimination, to me, like, this was super, super hard. And you essentially had 40 bags on either side, and you had to transfer the bags from one side to the next. And it was up to you to decide how many bags at a time your partner could pull across to the other side. And I thought it was super funny because when it started, Bear was like, yeah, throw 4 on, throw 4 on. I think he said throw 6 on, I think.
He said throw 6.
And he struggled that first time.
That's 180 pounds.
Yeah, and he struggled the first time, but then you could see him and Leroy both kind of get into a groove. And yeah, that looked really, really hard. They both kind of finished around the same point, but essentially this just came down to Davon out-dueling Shailene, right? Like, Shailene didn't have it, and I think the editing made it seem a lot closer than it actually was, because Dee at the end said, like, she just kind of just seemed like she was disappointed in Shailene, right? She's a lost cause, I think that was a quote that she made. So I think the editing made it seem closer than it actually was, but shouts to Davon and Bear, they worked well as a team. Like, Bear was egging her on, Bear was cheering her on, and, like, you know, rooting for her, keeping her motivated. And at the end of the day, again, a super difficult challenge and a good win for Bear and Davon.
Well, I got to back up because I got to defend our fellow Canadian Shailene. First of all, at one point, you're right. I think she gassed out. But at one point, when both of the guys were done their 40 bags, they said that Davon had 38 done and Shailene had 36 done. That's not an insurmountable lead. Like, that's pretty close, right? Like, that's just like, although it probably means that Davon's taking 2 bags for every one of Shailene's. But, like, it's not like it was a blowout, but I think that in the final, like, sled pulls, I think that Shailene was just gassed out. Yeah. It's also notable that, so the bags would go over to Davon and Shailene, and then the empty sled would come back, and then, like, the men would put their bags back on, and then the women have to pull again.
Yep.
Because, like, when the men are also pulling weights back to them, that would take them longer and would give the women more of a break, and vice versa. But when the sleds are empty coming back to the men, that means that Davon and Shailene are having, like, less downtime.
That is totally true.
And that's a problem.
That's true.
There was one thing that I just have to note, and, like, I don't, like, tell me if you had this, But Shailene, we basically have not heard from all season. Like, she is not a confessional killer.
No.
But it was so funny on a show filled with strong British and American accents and a Turkish accent. When Shailene finally spoke, like in confessional, it was so nice to hear a Canadian accent. Like, have you ever had that experience where you're just like, oh, I had a moment where she was speaking in confessional. I'm like, oh, like it was like the only thing I can compare it to is a breath of fresh air. Another similar time I had that, long time listeners might remember that I was in France 2 years ago, and I speak a little bit of French badly, but everyone in France obviously speaking to you has a French accent. And then we went to the memorial at Vimy Ridge, which is a big Canadian battle from the First World War, and all the staff that works there are Canadian because it's actually the government of France gave the property to the government of Canada. So all the staff are Canadians. They're all like university students. And that day was so weird because I'd had like 7 days of French accents to have like a dude from Oshawa speaking to me. And I found that with Shailene in this episode. Whereas, like, oh, whoa, Canadian accent. This is like nice but like weird. I didn't realize that when watching the challenge, I like brace myself for accents that I'm not used to. And she said something that was really Canadian, and like it's subtle, but like Canadians love to say Jesus when we get frustrated.
Is that a thing? Really? That's a thing?
Yeah. Russell Peters has a joke about how at least white Canadians always go Jesus, and Shailene, although she's not white, she did that in this episode where she said, "I love Davon, but Bear, Jesus." I was like, "Oh, so Canadian."
Fair enough.
It's like she didn't go full Letterkenny, but it was, and like I don't want to say like, "Oh, that's like only Canadians use Jesus," in that like as a curse word, but like the way she delivered it was so Canadian. The only way she could be more Canadian is a Peterborough fucking. You know how some Canadians will begin a sentence with the word fucking to like sort of announce that they're starting to speak, like fucking I was down by the LCBO to get my 2-6, and you know what I mean? That sort of, you've probably heard that. It was, wow. If she'd done one of those, I would have loved it.
Joe, how much do you follow Bomani Jones on Twitter? Do you follow him at all, or no? Are you familiar with his work or no?
I'm familiar with his work, but I don't follow him on Twitter.
So he has this thing, and this is a perfect example of this, John, where he always says there's such a clear divide in terms of two Americas, meaning right? Because like, and what it means essentially is just that like you think of things as American culture, but maybe the best example would be the fact that Donald Trump is president, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's two Americas in the sense that, yeah, you think American culture, but there's a huge difference between the Donald Trump supporters and non-supporters. So obviously I'm not using that in this example. I'm not like, that's an extreme. In a lesser extent, though, when you just said that whole like Jesus thing, the first thing that comes to my mind is Jesus, the notorious just, please. That's the only thing that was in my mind. And I'm trying to think, I'm like, do people really say that? I don't know. But and the next thing that popped in my mind was two Canadas. Yeah. But I just follow Bomani way too much.
There definitely are three Canadas, right? French Canada, rural Canada, and urban Canada.
And Toronto.
But for our listeners, there is a routine that Russell Peters had like 15 years ago, mm-hmm. About how white Canadians swear and laugh. He says that we sound like donkeys. It's a great routine, but listen to it and then go back and listen to Shailene, who again, I acknowledge is not white, but she does say, Jesus, just, I can't even do it right. Maybe our listeners will pick up on my Canadianness. But Yeah, she says it just like Russell Peters says it, and she's not doing it like on purpose. Like she's being very natural, and it was just like such a weird moment where you're like, oh, Canadian, weird. I didn't. I'm gathering you didn't have this experience at all with her accent or lack
I did
thereof to
not.
us.
No, I did not at all. And it was funny when you brought up the guy from Oshawa, or like this guy from Oshawa talking to you. I find that anytime a guy from Oshawa is talking to me, kind of weird. So I don't know. I'm just gonna say that and just let that go. And before yeah, just gonna let that go. Shouts to the schwa.
The schwa. I love that all of our American. I love it when we have our like Canadian minutes when we talk about this sort of thing. Especially because as I complained to you in text, we had someone accuse us of being American, and it pissed me off more than I thought it would.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
In any event, back to the challenge and the competition.
Oh yeah. So Bear and Davon
we're
win.
here to talk about.
Bear and Davon win, and yeah, they stay in the game. Shailene and Leroy are donezo.
And once again, another member of the American Alliance, I guess we have to call it that, of the old heads, I don't know how you want to put it, is done. But I think this is a pivotal moment in the season. But we're going to talk about that when we get to our MVPs.
So
I do have to say, I hate Bear. Like, I do not like him. And I had people defending him to me all day, or all week, and saying like, "Oh, he just likes to wind people up." And I said to one person on Twitter, "He's winding people up at the cost of money. Like this course of action will not work for him because eventually the UK alliance is going to get sick of his shenanigans too. Like they're not going to love the heat that he's bringing down on them as a group." Because next episode, obviously, Bear and Davon are going to have the relic, and the Americans, if they win the competition, they're going to gun for someone else in the British Alliance, right? Like they're going to go for Gorilla Ashley or Theo or whoever. It depends on who gets nominated, right?
True, and I'm sure Bear won't let the power go to his head either, right?
No, he'll be calm, cool, and collected. But like quoting Gladiator, like, "Are you not entertained?" Like, it wasn't that big a win. Nor can we really say that he won it, right? Like, it was Davon that got the win.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't have the patience for him. I also liked, before we get to what our favorite lines of the episode were, but I really like how Leroy told him that he was being a poor sport.
Yeah, that's actually my quote of the episode.
Oh, well then I'll let you take the reins on this.
No. Just because it actually sums up the Leroy that we know and why we like Leroy so much. Because the way that Leroy said it to him was so calm and cool and just chill, while still being matter of fact, and not like he didn't do it for show so that everyone could hear him. He just kind of calmly like tapped him like, "Hey man, like you're being a poor sport, man. Like just chill out for a bit." Not necessarily calling him out, but more so telling him like, "Just chill out, man. Like we get it, you won, but chill out." And I respected that. I liked it. That is my line of the episode. And I know it sounds kind of weird because there's a lot of other things that went out, that a lot of things that were more like flashy or funny, but I kind of want to give a hat tip to Leroy on the way out.
Yeah. My line of the episode, I'm not sure that I backed it up. I backed up my PVR to rewatch it. Maybe I didn't get it word for word, but he's a little hard to understand. But at the club, well, in the confessional, in reaction to what was going on in the club, Turbo said, "If you will not choose one man, maybe they will fight. Maybe someone will die." And I lost my shit because it wasn't just like the content of what Turbo was saying, but he was like excited at the idea that Theo and Leroy might fight and one of them might die over Cam. And like I'm sure that Turbo was just like joking around, like I'm sure this is his sense of humor. But it was such a funny line, and like he was so excited at the prospect of like people fighting to the death.
Yeah,
I
he's a
loved
character,
it.
man. He's a character. He's definitely a character. Not mad at Turbo at all. He just makes things. He's just funny. The World According to Turbo should be a segment every episode.
I really like him on Twitter. He's not like Amanda or Jemmy or Wes or any of the other ones who are just like hilarious on Twitter. But he's got a really good sense of humor about, like, he's got a self-deprecating sense of humor. Someone photoshopped Nani's head onto the body of a mother holding a baby, and then photoshopped Turbo's head onto it because he keeps calling her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And like he tweeted it, and he's like, "Ha ha ha! This is hilarious!" He's just seems like a chill dude. I also learned, how old do you think Turbo is?
I have no idea.
Nani, I think, is 28, 29. He's 30. So when I said last episode that he looks like he's 55, some people were like, no, he's actually 30. I pointed out that we're 5 years older than him. He looks 20 years older than us, Sheldon. Like, he looks so old for someone who's 30. I think it's the beard. I don't know. I love Turbo more and more every episode. But I have to ask you, Sheldon, who killed it for you?
To me, like it's obvious, and Bear is the MVP of this episode. Not only did Bear end up winning the elimination round, but he owned the episode in terms of things could have gone way worse for Bear in this episode. And instead, he comes out on top because not only does he stay in the house, he has a relic for next week, but the way that he handled the Georgia situation that could have blown up in his face, instead, the way that he handled that smoothed it all over. And yeah, I mean, in terms of being entertaining, he was that. And at the end of the day, sometimes simple reality show, I'm here to be entertained. And he provided that entertainment in this episode. And for that reason, even if it's over the top, it made me feel something. And for that reason, he is the MVP. He killed it.
So when Bear quoted Gladiator and said, "Are you not entertained?" you shouted yes at your TV. That's what you're saying.
I'm entertained. I'm entertained.
Well, I disagree. For me, Wes killed it this week.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. He could have coasted. He even joked on Twitter about coasting with the relic, and that like he and Dee would just like take her slack and just, let things play out. But not only did they win, but he made a big move. And I alluded to it very gently at the beginning of our episode. But what he did was so smart, because he recognized that in the chaos of all the veterans, all the American veterans sniping each other and picking each other off, that they were all getting taken out. Like, they were doing the dirty work of the UK alliance for the UK. Like, they were doing the work of the Brits by targeting each other. But now, by putting the heat on Bear, he has created order from chaos, and he's essentially unified the Americans against the British. Right?
Yeah.
Like, all the cards are on the table now. I think Bear, when he was mouthing off, even like mouthing off in the tribunal and mouthing off in the on the killing floor, I think he even acknowledged that there was a UK alliance. Now Wes can put in work, and he doesn't necessarily have to win competitions. Like, I don't think any of the American teams really want to put him in, and he's in a position where he can politic, and he say, listen, the cards are on the table. You've got Bear, you've got Theo, you've got Gorilla Ashley, you've got Georgia. Like, we have to dismantle this if we're going to win. And he also started to make the point that your fate isn't necessarily as tied to your partner as you need it to be, right? Like, the important votes in this episode were him and Hunter were voting along the same lines, right?
Totally
you just
true.
have to have people not necessarily your partner, but people just in the room that agree with you. Like that's the real work. Like they didn't really need Georgia to do anything, right? They just needed Hunter to go along with them and for Georgia to be not too mad at Hunter, which is what they did. So I know that, he didn't get rid of Bear, which is what he wanted, but I don't think Leroy and Shailene are the biggest loss to his alliance because Leroy and Johnny are so close. And longtime viewers know that Wes and Leroy don't always get along. So it's not the biggest loss to his alliance, and also that's one of the weaker teams. But I also think it solidifies things. Like we saw at the beginning of Wes and Amanda as a partnership, and Josh and Wes as a partnership. And obviously Hunter and Amanda have a history where they don't like each other. But if anyone can convince those two to sit down at the table and work together, it's going to be Wes. Like, I can totally foresee an episode in the future where Wes sits down Hunter and Amanda and is like, you guys got to squash your beef so that we can take out, I don't know, Gorilla Ashley and Cam or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I can see the beginnings of an alliance there. And also, I can't stress this enough. It was a chaotic situation where he might have been the next target, and now he's created some order by sort of drawing the line in the sand of us versus them, US versus them. So, Wes, he killed it for me this week.
Wow. That was a long love story to Wes by you, John.
You know what? I don't mind. And you know what? I don't think he'll mind.
Wow. That's
what happens when I have a day of just flying and being on planes to think about the challenge. I get in deep.
Wow. That was a lot, man. That was deep, man.
Where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at J Chidleyhill. And for this weekend, you're going to see me all over Los Angeles and Palm Springs for my cousin's wedding. If you live in the Palm Springs area and you see me, say hello. And until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it.